Hey, Jerry,
Hey, Tanya.
you are so far away. Where are you today?
I'm in Tyler, Texas at your parents' house.
This was not quite our plan, was it?
Well, I think it was, at least this early in the game, I think it was. So maybe we had some miscommunication.
You mean you don't have this all worked out just 2 weeks into the job?
No, I'm still trying to figure it out.
So today we are talking about marriage and communication. Hey, Jerry, we talk about living sober on purpose all the time. What is real life for real families?
Well, real life for real families is just dealing with the trials and tribulations of daily life as they come.
But we're also looking for growth, reaching our goals. We've had different things come in our lives that we want to achieve. How have we made that happen?
We work with people who are talented, who we admire, who we want some of their attributes to be imprinted on us.
And that came to us through several sessions of coaching with some international coaches and also some local coaches, which has really changed my life. How has it moved you forward?
Oh, it's definitely given me the ability to have a sounding board and to be able to talk through things that allowed me to figure out where I was and what I wanted, having somebody to help direct me.
And that's where coaching comes into play. I'm Tanya Joya, and I am a recovery coach, someone that helps you get unstuck, figure out what's next, and deal with fear and anxiety after someone in your family gets sober or during the sobriety process. Because people often feel like
the other shoe is going to drop.
And that really is a hard, stuck place. You don't feel like you can move forward with your dreams, with your goals, because you're constantly watching and waiting for something to happen. How about making a change in your life and looking forward? And to learn more about me, hop onto thejoyousfamily.com, The Joyous Family Facebook group, or The Joyous Family Instagram. And I'd love to do a discovery call with you. Just about 15 minutes of your time to see if coaching is right for you. Thank you so much, and I look forward to hearing from you.
Yes, we are. We are talking about marriage and communication. I know that because I was just told that that's what we're talking about. But we are communicating as we record.
Okay, you got to come in. You're the one who wanted to talk about the plan and the communication and those types of things.
I'm in. I'm talking.
Okay, you're leading.
All right. So I left. I left 2 Mondays ago the house to start booking loads and start trying to make back some money. So that would have been, that's a long time ago. I'm looking at my calendar right now and it's not moving. That would have been the 22nd of April. So before Wesley and my birthday, I left. Originally the plan was to try and figure a way back for the weekend to do some birthday party. And then the secondary.
And see the end game? The end game came out on your birthday?
Yeah, Avengers Endgame came out on the 26th. And Tanya took the boys without me to go see it. And, after I got over my heartache and depression, I got back to doing some more work. And again, now the next plan was to come back for the weekend of the 3rd, 4th, and 5th of May. And obviously that didn't work out because here I am in Tyler. But there was a big event going on at church. They had a Nerf gun war, and there was a big herding of horses that happens every year out that neck of the woods, and a Young Life cookout, which Tanya volunteered me to cook for, which I was fine with. I didn't think it was going to be a problem to try and get back home.
Yeah, you were supposed to be there to cook pancakes and sausage and bacon for all the bike riders coming in.
My understanding is it went just fine without me, though. So
it went really well. We had some other former restaurateurs there flipping pancakes, and Wes and Elijah did a really good job doing the serving. It went really well, and it was a beautiful day. Beautiful day.
That sounds great. I'm sorry to have missed it. So today's Monday, the 6th of May, and now the new plan, and at least it's lined up, not that something couldn't go wrong, but the new plan is for me to come home on, I'll be in Denver, Littleton, Colorado, just outside of Denver on Saturday the 11th. And again, things could happen, but that's where we're looking at now, on barring any technical difficulties. Then I should be home Sunday, maybe Saturday night, but definitely Sunday at the latest sometime, and I'll spend Sunday with the family. Monday, I was able to book a load, which again, wasn't necessarily the plan, but just trying to make up for some money stuff because I'm planning on taking a substantial amount of time off now that I've been gone for this long.
Now let's talk about me and how supportive I've been.
You have been so super supportive. Why don't I let you talk about how
No, you got to tell how supportive I've been. How I said, oh, this is just a learning curve. You'll figure it out.
That is right. She has been so super supportive, and she has been reminding me that, you're not supposed to understand everything that there is to know about this business in 3 weeks. And then the 14-year-old gets on her nerves and she's like, you need to get home right now. I'm going to kill him.
I'm not going to kill him. I love him. Well, one of the things that I'm figuring out, and a lot of women, there are also people in the military and women who have husbands that travel, or maybe the wife travels and the husband's at home. It could be either way. You don't know your time frame until you get there. And what happened, and I wrote about this in the last email and probably put it up on the blog, is I do haul the camper trailer. And I was going to haul the camper trailer out to this event this weekend, which is about an hour away. But I went to look at the electricity issues for the camper trailer, which is a 1971, that Jerry can make run perfectly. Absolutely perfectly. It's easy for him to make it run. We have a generator, we have lights, we have a solar panel, we have all those things. It's wonderful. But if you hop over on the blog, you can see the picture of what you have to hook up to do that. And I just burst into tears and called my mom. And it had been about 2 weeks since he had been gone. And that's about my time frame. And I don't think anybody knows their time frame until it begins to happen. So 2 weeks is just a little bit too long. And we're dealing with, how do you communicate? How do you pay the rent? How do you communicate about money? How do you deal with the child issues? Because we've had some significant child issues while he's been gone. It's just, it really, I'm really struggling with my own fears and feelings of abandonment. And it feels very much like when Jerry was not here to parent because he was using alcohol. That's not true now. He's not doing that, and he's not parenting, but he is not physically available, and sometimes he's not even verbally available. So we've been through that before, and there were many years when the kids were young that he just was not available to parent, and it has those feelings again. So it's triggering all those things, and I know after about 2 weeks, I think he needs to come home.
Yeah, I'm ready to come home. It's been a long time. As you can imagine, this was a substantial amount of capital, the majority of our life savings to get this off the ground, even considering that we've got a significant bank loan on the power unit for the truck, the power unit. But just all of the federal bureaucracy, everybody wanted their slice, and there's still more money to come out just to operate this first year. And then, of course, getting everything ready once the truck was acquired, the downtime at work. Anyway, the business costs roughly $2,200 a month to not operate. So even if you're not running, that's what it costs. It's actually more than that, but that's the bulk of it. So that's intimidating. That's a significant mortgage for the average household of four. That's all new to me, and all I see is those fixed costs. So the idea of coming home and when there's money to be made going this way or that way, it was just so easy to jump on the money, which again, most of hasn't come in because these bills a lot of times are 30 days at a minimum before they're being paid. So to really try and bank up some billing so that as this stuff starts to roll in, we have a stream of income, because our household costs aren't small either, right?
So do you see how we're talking, audience? Do you see how we're talking on two different levels? I'm talking about family and connection, and he's talking about bills. And I get it, because I've run a business too. I've run a business with overheads, and that is problematic, and it makes you a little bit crazy when you're afraid you're not going to meet your overheads, all those types of things. What I'm looking at is we would appreciate audience suggestions too. We've got to find a better way to connect and to work with each other on how we connect in creative ways, and especially with the boys. They are lonely and they want their dad back, and we really would like to spend some more time with him, which was the plan in starting this.
Right. The ROI looked like it was going to work with 4 days working and 3 days, so 4 nights out, 3 nights home. And I don't think that that's impossible. The freight industry was fluctuating as soon as I started to write this ROI, and it all happened pretty fast over the course of 2 months. And no sooner did we get ready to be up and running that freight really took a downturn. It's actually lower right now on the national average for van freight, which is what I'm doing. It's lower now than it's been in 3 years, where last year, or 2018, it was the highest that it had ever been. So even writing a conservative return on investment summary in 2018, and I mean, I wrote a very conservative one, when freight rates go down 35% in a few months, made my very conservative ROI look like it was optimistic.
And this is where women in the audience, you may be getting frustrated, as I'm getting frustrated. And I keep bringing up, how do you connect with the family? How do you make this work? And Jerry keeps backing up into his head. This is pretty much the addict response to the codependent. The codependent is, I need something, I want something, I feel something. And the addict says, I don't feel anything, and here are all the stats on why. So come back into the conversation, Jerry. Creative ways to connect with your family. That's maybe what we'll call the podcast, is creative ways to connect with your family while you're on the road. We could even brainstorm some right now, because just calling is not working. Your oldest son is very lonely for you. He's got some things that only you can handle. I'm not going to deal with this Corvette in the junkyard that he wants to handle. So there are always, for either parent that is gone, there's always things that need to be handled.
What I do think is very, you can look at it as bad or as good, but what I think that like you were saying, where I continue to come back to finances and you continue to come back to relationship, to view that as a bad thing, like not the direction that you didn't visualize the podcast going, I really think is overlooking the pearl of this. I mean, this is the reality, this is where the stress is coming from. And to try and sugarcoat that or try and hide it, and I don't think we should hide, I don't think we should, show all our dirty laundry, but this is the reality. This is the stress point. So we've captured some of it, and we've captured it in a relatively peaceful way. So I think that's a good thing.
I think it's really important that we actually work really well together. Jerry and I, on the baseline, have the same values. We have a high value for the top value is our relationship with God. We have fought really hard to stay married. Our boys are our biggest commitment, and we have to support our boys. We are just coming in at two different levels. And if you're male or female listening to this right now, you're coming in at two different levels. I've picked up the main responsibility for the family. Not that Jerry's not responsible for relationships and things, but he is the main financial earner. And instead of one saying, okay, let's talk finances for a little while, and then let's talk what are the emotional needs, we just keep missing each other. Is that what you're hearing, Jerry?
I think there's a lot to that, particularly this early in the game. With no real reserve savings, my focus is so highly on the financial part. And until a lot of these bills start being paid and coming in, I think it's going to remain there. And I think and correct me if I'm wrong, but what I feel is that from your position, with it being so new on the solo part at home, that's a learning curve too. And there's a real culture shock going on, and your focus is to get that fixed. Is that or improved or something?
Some of that. I mean, what I said earlier about it being a throwback to when you weren't present because you were using is what it's triggering. Because when they were toddlers, you just weren't available to be there with them. You were maybe physically present some of the time, but you weren't available to be there with them. And I went into, I can handle it all. I can do everything. I can take care of everything. I went into monster mom mode, and I don't want to be monster mom anymore. Monster mom makes me angry at everybody. Monster mom makes me look at your oldest son who looks just like you and go, "Ugh, I'm really angry with daddy right now." And that's when I knew I was way out of control the first time. That's when I really hooked into Al-Anon and said, I can't do this anymore. It folds back into my self-care. So I could manage the family by myself. And, it's really nice having a paycheck coming in. I don't know how single women do it who have to work and manage their family the whole time. Single parents, anyway. So that really triggers everything for me. And then we're at a different stage. We're at this, I've got a man boy. I've got somebody who looks me eyeball to eyeball, and I have no man in the house to help me with it. So there's just a whole different dynamic going on for me. And being able to, a lot of what happens in alcoholic drug addicted families is you don't feel, you don't talk about it, and you certainly don't put it out there, because then you become the problem. And so again, when I say, hey, I'm hurting, or I need this, or I need that, and you're so focused on the finances, which is important. I'm not saying it's not important. And I'm saying, but I'm focused on the eternal. My children are eternal. My paycheck is not. We've got, I think you believe the children are eternal too. We've got strong values in this area. We're not able yet to fully, because as you said, it's so new, not able yet to come underneath each other and say, I really hear you. I've been trying to say, I really hear you, that you just can't get home. I need that in return. And that's where I think we're missing something in there. You love those boys. There's no doubt about it. You would be here if you could.
Yeah, I would. And school's almost over. I look forward to working with them. They may not think it's the greatest time in the world, but it may be what they have to understand is they don't get to make every choice, and it will be one-on-one time, which, may take away some of the mystery or the aura of sainthood that I probably get when I'm not around. So I'm looking forward to that too. And, again, this is really new, and there's a lot of kinks to be worked out. And the only way to do it is to do it and get out there and figure out what you don't know.
Well, and so that's where I think we could come up with a good plan, or we have some ideas of how to be supportive of each other long distance. I mean, we have all this technology now. Things could change. One of the things that I think we did well under other stress points is we prayed together every morning, and we've been trying to call each other every morning, and you have a chance to talk to the boys before they leave for school, but we haven't really added that prayer piece in.
Yeah, we've actually started to slide on the calls too, right?
We were out of service over the weekend because we were in Maybell and places like that. So I think that's something. I was listening to the Happiness Project, and one of the things that Gretchen Rubin says is you have less to talk about if you talk less often. So if you talk regularly, then you talk about the simple things, the everyday things of, oh my gosh, the dog ran off today, or Elijah just got accepted to Apple Podcasts. You wouldn't talk about all those everyday things if you didn't talk every day.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. And, now we can redouble our efforts to start up our communications in the mornings and in the evenings. You can add prayer to that. I think that's a great first step.
And I'm also looking for anything else to help you connect directly with the boys. Now, the boys all have phones. I just learned yesterday that Bill Gates does not allow his children to have smartphones, that he thinks they're bad for them. So maybe we want to rethink our plan there. Our boys have phones, but they can't take them to school, and there's got to be other ways to connect too. And that's where we were looking at our Instagram page of doing silly videos on that back and forth for us and for our listeners. How else could we connect?
I'm going to just digress for just a second. Did you see the live that I put up there yesterday?
I did not. Again, we've been out of service.
It was good. Anyway, check it out. Everybody check it out at the Joyous Family Instagram page.
It goes down after 24 hours if you just do it live.
Oh, too bad. You missed it. It was great. I had a bunch of panhandling birds that I was feeding, and they started fighting. It was a lot of fun.
How else have we found to communicate, especially when the topic is really hot?
Well, we're doing these when the topic is hot. I'm not sure how we have.
Well, we've emailed back and forth when we just can't vocalize to each other what's going on.
Yeah, well, some of that was court ordered at one point, but yes, we've done that.
It's not a bad thing.
Well, I mean, as long as it works out for everybody's schedule, and yeah, it's not a bad thing.
I think the email, the writing it down, those types of things gives you the opportunity to say what you need to say uninterrupted, which is what
And
I
all
asked you to
caps and
do
bold
about.
sometimes too.
Well, I mean, you can yell at each other, but you can also say what you need to say completely uninterrupted, which is what I asked you to do about we're dealing with taxes, because with a new business, you have to deal with taxes and stuff like that.
You asked me to do that with taxes? What do you mean?
You wanted to talk about taxes, about how much we're going to pay in taxes, and I
Oh
said,
yeah,
can we
yeah,
write
that's
it
right.
down?
And yeah, and a way to try and avoid as much tax liability as we were looking at, I had an idea, and I think that was very creative and beneficial that Tanya said, okay, look, I think what you said was call me and leave me a voice message.
Yes, because I knew you couldn't write. So you call. So email is fine, or you could call and leave a voice message. Because what I found out is I'm a blurter. Maybe you can't tell, but something comes into my frame, and maybe I'm not settled enough to deal with it, and then I just blurt out things, and I don't even really mean them. They just kind of fall off the tip of my tongue. So if you're a blurter, maybe we should start a blurter club. I'm learning some stuff about women and ADHD, and I'm not sure I'm there or not there, but that's one of the characteristics of ADHD is just blurting out whatever you think. And I knew taxes was going to be hot enough that I didn't want to deal with it right that minute. And so you called and left me a message. I think I waited 24 hours before I responded.
Yeah, I think so. And your response was thought out. And there's a squirrel out there doing gymnastics, and it's so distracting.
That's what you get in
Thought
Texas
out,
is looking
and
out
it
the
made a lot
tree.
of sense. It kind of offered us, it offered me the tool to do what I wanted to do, which I think will benefit everybody. And it offered you the opportunity to see what was going on. So specifically see what was going on. So I thought that was good.
And I think one of the hottest topics, especially when you're putting a marriage back together after drugs and addiction, where money has been running out the door, or with the codependency, where you've been not being an earner, or maybe you have been, it just depends, is finances. That was a real touch and go for us. We had to get we weren't even really ready to deal with it when we remarried. We did that later on. We kept separate budgets for the next 3 or 4 years.
Yeah, and we still to some extent keep separate budgets because we have to in order to balance everything and to see how much we've spent on our categories. But I think that from what I've read and from talking with other couples, that finances are the number one issue with marriage and with serious relationships. I mean, I've heard a statistic once that financial infidelity is more damaging in a lot of cases than sexual infidelity.
And if you want to read, we have a blog post on thejoyousfamily.com about financial infidelity and a lot of the struggles that happen with that. And it's huge. It's absolutely huge. And if you haven't heard the infidelity term used with finances, it's about not being able to be honest, to be forthright about your finances. And it's often going and using things. Maybe you shop too much. Maybe you bought a whole bunch of machines, or maybe you bought this or the other, but it's not telling your partner, and it's not being honest about your finances. And that's financial infidelity. And is that what you...
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I think it specifically, it involves dishonesty.
Yes, which is certainly the double life that addicts and codependents have to live to continue to do their thing, to continue to feed their needs as far as those addictive tendencies happen.
Right.
And so the dishonesty is in there. And that's where any big change like this, where mates are going to be separated, where you don't have to see that person on a regular basis, can bring up all that dishonesty and trigger those feelings again.
I agree.
As we're looking at this, one of the things we wanted to bring out in this podcast is that even though we've come through a lot of this journey and we're functioning on a pretty normalized level, we're still looking for that forward growth piece. That when a change, anytime, what is it? It's like death of a child, death of a spouse, and
new job.
then new job, and then moving. And so what essentially Jerry has done is taken his shell and moved. With the cooperation of the rest of the family, but he is no longer in our daily lives.
Well, in a general sense, it's very similar to a divorce, where I'm gone, I've had, I don't know that I've had to move. It's more like camping. It's really nice camping, but it's camping and it's a new job. So we've kind of got the big three, at least from Tanya's perspective and from my perspective too, because believe it or not, it's not all sunshine and roses being gone. Yeah, I mean, it's comfortable where I live, but I am not at home. I am not seeing my children every day. Now, hopefully we'll get to the point here as quickly as possible where I see them more than I was in my previous job and finances aren't impacted. So we have the same or better income than we had previously, but it's going to be some time. There's going to be some figuring out to get there.
And that's true with all new businesses. But what our therapist used to say is these changes don't create new issues. They just bring out the unresolved issues, things that we hadn't completely worked through, which is why this is triggering me so much, and which I'll let you answer that, but which is why I think you're going back into your head instead of checking in with your heart.
Yeah, you might be right. But what's happening with me is there's the level of stress that I have over finances is because I'm very well aware of that we will have new stresses if finances also get added into this mix. So just like I was saying earlier, where families straight and using, sober and addicted, finances are an issue, unless they're not an issue. But that's a very, very small minority of America, if not the world, where finances are not an issue. If you are never worried about paying the rent, paying the water bill, and paying the groceries, if that it never comes into your mind and you have $10,000 worries as opposed to $1,000 worries, well, that's great. And that's cool. But you're dramatically in the minority. So when those issues are on the table, for example, if you're going to lose a $10,000 stock option that you had going on and you're looking at a $10,000 loss, that's a big deal. But it's not as big of a deal as if you're looking at not being able to pay the $1,000 rent this month. That's a huge deal. Those are two completely different levels of problems. So with that being said, my focus is truly, like Tanya was saying, on these $1,000 issues and not having them, because we don't have them right now. But I tend to look long term, and I don't want to have them. So we haven't had them for a long time, and I don't want to have them.
Some of that is still a value difference. And Jerry, I know you believe this too. I believe that God is our provider, that He will provide for us. I do believe we have to participate in that it just doesn't fall out of the sky. Although it has at some times. I've had people invite me to dinner or bring groceries over or make sure we could clean out their freezer when I didn't have anything in my freezer. So God has stepped in the physical for us at different points in time in our life. I, again, see this a little bit differently, that it will work out and money is not the main focus of how I run my life. And it never has been. That money has always been there. Now, you come from a very different childhood background. And so again, in our communication process, we kind of hit walls because we come from a little bit different structure in there. And there are so many biblical verses about seeking God first, about He dresses the lilies of the field and He feeds the birds and He does all of those pieces, that to rest and trust in that, I think, is very hard for males. I think it's much harder for you all than it is for us to be able to do that. And there may be some differences, and there's been plenty of times where I have earned a significant portion of the money. In this stage with the children, I have not. And so it has not been my biggest worry. So I'm not saying it isn't something. I'm just looking at pulling away from the making money an idol, that even if we make all the money in the world, even if we had the $10,000 problem, that doesn't mean these underlying triggers of our marriage are going to go away unless we figure out how to work through them. So when one of us is talking finance and the other one is talking familial relationship, we're not on the same page.
No. And I think that is, we can look at this like it's a breakdown, or we can look at it like it's a breakthrough, because it was less than 100% obvious in the past that we were on these two different planes as far as the family is concerned. Tanya's focus is clearly on family relations and family values, and my focus is I don't like to use the word money because money, A, has such a negative connotation, and B, it tends to just be associated with, notes or numbers on a computer screen. I mean, and that's, money in itself, it doesn't have any value. It's just, it's just a medium of exchange. I like to think about it more like supply, and what can I, the need for supplies. I guess security is the right word. I like to think about it as provision or security. Now, Tanya did touch on something which I completely agree with, and I think about often. And to put our security in our, or the responsibility of our security in our own hands is a sin. That is the lack of faith, is to say, well, I have to provide or nobody else is going to. But like all things in life and all things in Christianity, I think there's a real balancing act here. There are some clear do's and there are some clear don'ts in Christianity, but for the most part, it's a real balancing act, to just stay at home and, and play with the kids and do nothing else. I don't think that's what God is looking for from a family either, because there has to be provision. We even, the classic example of the slave and the talents, where, the idea is to take what you've been given and grow it. And from that comes a whole bunch more. And to who is entrusted with a little, even more will be granted, right? So if they're faithful with the little bit that they've been given, there's a balancing act here where we're not supposed to become dependent on our own abilities, but then again, we are supposed to be working toward growing the what God has given us.
Well, and if you look at it, the supply or the money or the provision could become an idol, and also the family could become an idol. So I could put my children, I could put my husband, I could put, developing relationships with my children above God too. That's where I went to an interesting event yesterday, and it was very upsetting, and I have to put my children back at the feet of God, because at age 12 and 14, I still have some influence and I still have some guidance happening there. And I really feel strongly that I still need to be around, not just turn them loose. It's like toddlers with cars now, not just turn them loose. I have to also say, as I did when we were going through all our trauma, is, God, these are your children. You don't have any grandchildren. These are your children. And to turn them over and say, I can't fix all this. I can't make all this better. And in fact, if I tried to do that, it would actually cause more damage than good. And to turn them to the person who really does hold their lives in his hands. And that's where we're using these old communication styles and battling with each other, instead of saying, we're both turning our specific jobs into idols. How do we come back together as a couple? How do we come back and say, God is for us, and the one who roams the earth like a roaring lion would rather see us split up or dead.
What? What's that? What's that last point you made?
That the one who roams the earth like a roaring lion would rather divide us. Satan would rather divide us than see us dead. That is always his purpose in our lives.
I'm thinking Aslan, and I'm thinking roaring lion being God.
No. Again, Jerry and I are not in the same room, so it's harder to cue off each other when we're not in the same place. No, is that there are forces out there that would like to divide our marriage, and one of our biggest goals is to say no to that, to say that God has already claimed our marriage, he's already claimed us, and that we will continue to say no to all those forces that try and move us apart.
Hear, hear. That's a lot of good content we just produced right there.
So just as quick tips, we need some help. If you've got tips on, if you've experienced this long distance relationship and long distance family setup, we need some help with that. One of the things that we're implementing is twice daily calling. We're going to add prayer back into it. That if we've got a hot topic, that we either leave messages for each other or write emails. What else have you got going on?
Gee whiz, I mean, you're talking about asking for help, and I think we just outlined a bunch of things that would have been so beneficial to us a couple of years ago. I am very interested to see if our listening audience has more creative ideas or just stuff to add to that, because frankly, it's taken us years to come up with that list.
But we know they're smarter than we are.
No, if that was true, they wouldn't listen to us. They'd be like, what are these idiots doing?
No, we believe that you guys have wisdom that we don't have, and we'd really appreciate that information. If you've got more about that, we are struggling with this piece right now, and figuring out how we're going to make this work. The new adventure, the newness. The newness is more
intelligence. Intelligence in numbers. You talk about, between Tanya and I, we have about 32, 34 years of marriage experience. But as we add up everybody else in the room or in the listening audience, you're in the hundreds, thousands. You're into a lot of years of marriage experience.
How do we get 32 years? Did you add our 15 years together?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So 15 and 15
years together.
Yeah, but we were married to each other.
Well, I mean, just because the state government signs off on your relationship doesn't somehow make it valid in the eyes of God, as far as I'm concerned. Like, oh, honey, we've got such a good thing going here. We got to get the government involved in this. It just doesn't sound very logical. But anyway, yeah. So the time, our spiritual marriage of 32 years experience combined, start adding everybody else in the audience, and you're, in thousands of years experience. So that's pretty cool to be able to just brainstorm together and spitball and see what sticks.
So I have restarted the Joyous Family Facebook page and doing morning prayer on that almost every morning, about 6 out of the 7 days. And then we have the Instagram going again if you want to see what's going on. We had a great Nerf gun war post yesterday about all that. That was super fun. And we'd love your suggestions. So if you want to hop on there and give us suggestions, put those down in the comments. I'll post this podcast over there too.
Bye.
As we are testing out, even in a marriage that's been going for a while and has been through the fire, long distance still causes some issues.
That's for sure. I think we're both experiencing some learning curves here as we get used to this new system. And of course, I've sent it into shock by being gone for as long as I have right off the bat.
Which was certainly not our plan. We wanted him home. He missed his birthday. He missed our son's birthday. He missed a weekend of camping. And it looks like, I don't know if he's going to be home for Mother's Day or not. But I'm not your mom.
When is Mother's Day? You're the mom. You're not my mom.
It's this coming Sunday.
I'm actually with my mom right now. She said when my mom died, your mom said she would be... or we could be, or what did she say? That they could be my parents now.
That
was really nice. It makes me tear up just thinking about it.
So you can find all this and more at thejoyousfamily.com. And we talked about several blog posts that are over there that I will leave in the show notes that already talk about some of the things that we've worked through. And this is us relighting the fire of some old skills that we used when we were separated. We were separated for about 23 months. And so we look forward to hearing any communication skills that you've got to offer us over at thejoyousfamily.com or on our Instagram and Facebook page of the same name. Bye.
Bye.